My whole life has been dedicated to exploring the wonders of the animal kingdom. I've traveled the globe, coming face to face with some of the most incredible creatures on Earth. But I always had this wild idea, a dream, of bringing a piece of that adventure home. I wanted a pet that felt like a living fossil, a genuine dinosaur in my own house. After a lot of research, I found the perfect candidate, the frilled dragon. With its incredible neck frill and ancient appearance, it's the closest thing to a miniature triceratops you can find today. This wasn't just about getting a pet, it was about embarking on a new expedition, right in my living room. Finding one of these amazing lizards wasn't as simple as going to a local pet store. I had to venture into the digital wilderness, searching for a reputable breeder of exotic animals. I finally found a website that specialized in legally and ethically sourced reptiles. The price tag was steep, around $800, but for a living piece of prehistory, it felt like a worthy investment. I placed the order, and the waiting game began. For about a week, I felt a mix of excitement and nervousness, wondering what it would be like to finally meet my new companion. The anticipation was building every single day. Then, the day finally came. A FedEx truck pulled up, and the driver handed me a box clearly marked with "Live Animal" in bold letters. It was a surreal moment, knowing a living, breathing creature from halfway around the world was inside. I carefully carried the package inside, my heart pounding with excitement. The journey it had taken was long, and I knew it would be stressed, thirsty, and hungry. My top priority was to get it into a safe and comfortable environment as quickly as possible. The unboxing was a careful, deliberate process, peeling back the layers of packaging to reveal the precious cargo within. As I opened the final container, I got my first look at him. He was smaller than I expected, but absolutely magnificent. His colors were a beautiful mosaic of browns and grays, perfectly designed for camouflage. He looked a little dazed from the trip, but his eyes were bright and alert, taking in his new surroundings. I felt an immediate connection, a sense of responsibility for this incredible animal. He wasn't just a pet, he was a window into another world, a time when giants roamed the earth. This was the beginning of my very own Jurassic Park adventure, and I couldn't wait to see what would happen next. Before my new friend even arrived, I had a massive project ahead of me, building the perfect home. Frilled dragons come from the hot, humid forests of Australia and New Guinea, so I had to replicate that environment precisely. I started with a large glass terrarium, which would serve as the foundation of this miniature ecosystem. To create a naturalistic background, I used expanding foam, spraying it onto the back wall. While it was still wet, I pressed in pieces of wood and cork bark, creating ledges and textures. Once it dried, I covered the entire thing in dirt and wood chips, making it look like a real forest floor. Next came the substrate, or the ground layer. I used a compressed coconut fiber brick, which you have to rehydrate with water. It was amazing to watch this small, hard block expand into a huge pile of soft, earthy material. I mixed it with some other organic ground cover to create a rich, soil-like base that would hold humidity well. To bring the habitat to life, I added real plants I picked up from a local store, along with some lush carpet moss. The centerpiece was a large, thick branch I found outside. I sawed it down to size, hosed it off thoroughly, and placed it diagonally across the tank, creating a perfect ramp up to the basking area. Technology was the most critical part of this build. These lizards need high humidity, so I installed an automatic humidifier that would release a fine mist throughout the day. For drinking water, a simple bowl wasn't enough. They often drink from dripping leaves in the wild. I set up a small water pump with tubing that created a constant, gentle drip onto a leaf, giving him a natural water source. Heat and light were also essential. I installed a powerful heat lamp, a high-intensity heat bulb, and a special UV bulb to mimic the sun's rays, which they need for their health. Finally, I placed a thermometer at the highest point of the branch to ensure the basking spot reached a perfect 100 degrees Fahrenheit. To help trap all the heat and humidity inside, I placed a sheet of aluminum foil over part of the mesh lid. The habitat was complete. It was a self-contained slice of the Australian outback, a perfect palace for a tiny dinosaur. I stood back and admired my work, feeling proud of the little world I had created. Now, all it needed was its king, and he was waiting patiently in his box for the grand reveal of his new home. With the enclosure ready, it was time to introduce the lizard to his new kingdom. I gently placed him inside, and his reaction was immediate and instinctive. He was clearly dehydrated from his long journey because he went straight for the dripping water leaf and started drinking. After quenching his thirst, he made his way up the large branch, positioning himself directly under the heat lamp to bask. It was incredible to see his natural behaviors kick in so quickly. He knew exactly what he needed. For the first few hours, he just sat there, soaking up the warmth and light, recovering from the stress of shipping. His first meal was an adventure in itself. I bought some large crickets and released them into the terrarium. The moment the crickets started moving, the hunter inside the lizard awakened. He watched them with intense focus, and then with a burst of speed he lunged and snatched one up. Watching him eat was super cool. It was a raw and wild display of a predator in action. He actively hunted down every last cricket, proving he was already feeling comfortable and at home in his new environment. It was a huge relief to see him eating so well right away. Handling him for the first time was a different story. I'll admit I was a little scared. I knew they could bite, and their frill, when displayed, is an intimidating sight. I started by putting on a pair of gloves, more for my own confidence than anything else. Instead of grabbing him directly, I gently lifted the small log he was resting on, and brought him out of the enclosure. He remained completely calm, his body relaxed. Throughout the entire interaction, he never once flared his famous neck frill, which is a sign of stress or anger. This was a very good sign, indicating he was a calm and docile individual. Feeling more confident, I decided to take him outside for some natural sunlight. I placed him on a large log in my yard, and he immediately blended in with the bark. He seemed to enjoy the real sun, basking peacefully. I even brought my chickens over to see what they would do, and they hilariously ran away, clearly intimidated by this miniature dinosaur. I tried to see if I could get him to display his frill by showing him a picture of a predatory bird on my phone, but he wasn't fooled. He just looked at the phone, completely unfazed. His persistent calmness was the most surprising thing of all. After spending some time with my new frilled dragon, it was time to answer the big question. Does this dinosaur make a good pet? I decided to rate him in a few key categories. First up was care. Specifically eating and drinking. Watching him hunt crickets and drink from the water dripper was one of the coolest things I've ever seen in a pet. It was like having a nature documentary play out in my own home. Because he was so active and fun to watch, I gave him a solid 9 out of 10 for care. It's a bit of work, but the payoff is incredible. Next, I rated his friendliness. Even though I was still a little too nervous to hold him directly in my hands without gloves, his behavior spoke volumes. He was unbelievably calm and never showed any signs of aggression or fear. He let me move him around, take him outside, and observe him up close without any fuss. The fact that he never flared his frill was the most telling sign that he was comfortable. For his gentle and tolerant nature, I gave him a 7 out of 10 for friendliness. With more time and trust, I'm sure that score would only go up. Of course, I had to get a second opinion from my family. I showed the little guy to my mom, and her reaction was priceless. She was absolutely fascinated by him. She thought he was incredible and immediately fell in love with his prehistoric looks. She even came up with the perfect name for him, Mr. Prehistoric. When I asked her to rate him as a pet, she didn't hesitate for a second. She gave him a perfect 10 out of 10, completely charmed by our unique new family member. Her enthusiastic approval was a great sign. So, what's the final score? Averaging my scores and my mom's, Mr. Prehistoric earned an impressive 8.7 out of 10. My conclusion is that a frilled dragon is a very, very good pet. But it's not for everyone. It requires a significant investment in time and equipment to create the right environment. However, if you're willing to put in the work, you'll be rewarded with a fascinating, beautiful, and surprisingly calm animal. Having a pet that looks like it walked straight out of the Cretaceous period is an experience unlike any other. It's a true adventure.